Captain Zephyr Claxon stared at the holographic display showing Earth's location and wondered how his career had come to this. The blue-green marble floating in the void looked disappointingly ordinary for a planet that represented their last hope. Then again, most things looked disappointing when you were commanding a diplomatic vessel called the Moderate Concern. Captain, his communications officer Blitz Zapworth announced with the enthusiasm of someone announcing a dental appointment. We're receiving acknowledgement from the Earth government. They're asking if we want to meet at something called a Starbucks. Zephyr's 4 eye stalks drooped in unison. 6 months ago, the Galactic Confederation's defense grid had started failing catastrophically. The Zelthari Empire, masters of quantum engineering, had taken one look at the problem and politely suggested maybe trying meditation instead. The Crystallon Collective, who could literally think in 11 dimensions, had simply vibrated in confusion and gone home. Even the robotic hegemony, who never met a problem they couldn't solve with superior logic and bigger computers, had basically shrugged their mechanical shoulders and recommended turning it off and on again. Which left humanity, the species that had only achieved faster than light travel 15 years ago and still used something called duct tape to fix their spaceships. The same species that had somehow convinced half the galaxy they were harmless by sending diplomatic messages that consisted mainly of cat videos and the recipes for something called pizza. Sir, Blitz continued, they're also asking if we have any dietary restrictions and whether we prefer regular or decaf. What's decaf? Zephyr asked, already regretting the question. I have no idea, sir, but they seem very concerned about it. Zephyr activated the ship's intercom. Attention, crew of the Moderate Concern. We are about to make contact with humanity. Please remember that these beings are considered primitive by galactic standards. They probably don't even have proper quantum stabilizers. We'll ask them to look at our defense grid. They'll politely decline due to technological limitations, and we'll move on to Plan B. What's Plan B, sir? Asked his engineer. Flux capacitor. Zephyr paused. They'd been so desperate they'd never actually developed a Plan B. We'll cross that bridge when we come to it, he said, using an expression he'd learned from human broadcasts. At least their idioms were colorful, even if they made no sense. The meeting took place at what humans called the International Space Station, which was apparently their idea of an impressive orbital facility. Zephyr had seen bathroom tiles with more advanced technology, but he kept his opinions to himself as they docked with what looked like a collection of tin cans held together with wishful thinking. The first human to greet them was a stocky man with graying hair, wearing coveralls that had seen better decades. Welcome to Earth, he announced cheerfully. I'm Chief Engineer Murphy O'Malley. Hope you don't mind the accommodations. We're still getting used to having actual aliens visit. Can I get you some coffee? Before Zephyr could ask what coffee was, Murphy had already started pouring a dark liquid from a container that looked suspiciously like it might explode at any moment. Now, I understand you folks have some technical difficulties. Defense grid problems, right? Yeah, we've been monitoring your communications for a while now. Hope you don't mind, but when someone's broadcasting in the clear across half the galaxy, it's kind of hard not to eavesdrop. Zephyr's eye stalks twisted in confusion. You've been monitoring our communications? Oh sure, for about 20 years now. Fascinating stuff. We particularly enjoyed the philosophical debates about whether consciousness can exist in a quantum state. Our physicists had a field day with that one. Murphy handed Zephyr a cup of the steaming liquid. Anyway, about this defense grid of yours, mind if we take a look? Before Zephyr could respond, another human burst through the airlock. This one was a woman with wild hair and eyes that seemed to sparkle with dangerous curiosity. Murphy. Are these our new friends? I'm Dr. Petra Volt, xenoarchaeologist, xenobiologist, and part-time baker. I brought cookies. She thrust a container of small, round objects at them. I wasn't sure what you could eat, so I made them with basic proteins and carbohydrates. They're chocolate chip, but I used synthesized chocolate in case you're allergic to cocoa. Are you allergic to cocoa? What about gluten? Do you even have digestive systems? Zephyr tried to process this information while Murphy was already connecting some kind of device to the moderate concern's data ports. Murphy, he said carefully, what exactly are you doing? Just taking a peek at your technical specifications. Don't worry, we're not downloading anything sensitive. Just the basic operational parameters, power consumption, system architecture, quantum field harmonics, dimensional stability matrices, and your entertainment preferences. We don't have entertainment preferences, Zephyr said weakly. You do now, Murphy announced cheerfully. I've installed a basic media system in your ship. Nothing fancy, just access to about 40,000 human movies, 8 million songs, and complete works of something called The Office. Trust me, you'll thank me later. Petra was meanwhile examining Zephyr's equipment with the intensity of someone who'd never seen a shiny object before. Is this a quantum displacement field generator? It's beautiful. Mind if I take it apart to see how it works? Please don't, Zephyr said, but she was already holding some kind of scanner that was making alarming beeping sounds. Oh, this is fascinating. Your technology is so elegantly simple. It's like you've solved complex problems with the most straightforward solutions possible. Meanwhile, we've been overcomplicating everything for decades. She looked up at Murphy. Are you thinking what I'm thinking? Depends, Murphy replied, not looking up from his work. Are you thinking we should completely overhaul their entire system and maybe add some cup holders? I was thinking more along the lines of defensive improvements, but cup holders are good too. 3 hours later, Zephyr was beginning to understand why some species preferred to handle their problems with violence. What had started as a simple request for technical assistance had somehow evolved into Murphy completely rewiring the moderate concern's power systems while Petra took detailed scans of everything from their gravity generators to their bathroom facilities. The good news, Murphy announced, his head buried deep in what used to be their main console, is that your defense grid problem is totally fixable. The bad news is that whoever designed this system was apparently afraid of efficiency. What do you mean? Zephyr asked, though he was beginning to suspect he didn't want to know. Well, for starters, you're running everything through a single quantum processor when you could easily distribute the load across multiple parallel systems. And this power coupling here, it's like you're trying to run a marathon while breathing through a straw. Plus, and no offense, but your security protocols are basically just asking nicely for people not to break in. Petra looked up from her scanner. Also, your defensive capabilities are entirely reactive. You wait for someone to attack, then you respond. That's adorable, but humans prefer a more proactive approach. Proactive how? Zephyr asked, though every instinct told him not to. Before either human could answer, the space station's docking bay filled with an ominous rumbling sound. Through the viewports, Zephyr watched in growing horror as what appeared to be an entire fleet of human warships dropped out of hyperspace. Murphy said conversationally, that would be Admiral Thunderbolt. I called him when you first arrived. Hope you don't mind, but when someone shows up asking for help with their defenses, it usually means someone's planning to attack them. The lead ship was roughly the size of a small moon and appeared to be bristling with more weapons than the entire Galactic Confederation Navy. As Zephyr watched, it launched what looked like several thousand smaller ships that immediately began forming defensive formations around the space station. Murphy, Zephyr said carefully, exactly how long have you been monitoring our communications? Long enough to know that 3 different hostile species have been making aggressive moves toward Confederation space over the past 6 months. The Devourers are massing ships near the outer rim. The Shadow Collective has been probing your border defenses. And don't even get me started on whatever the Void Cult is planning. Petra nodded enthusiastically. We've been tracking their movements through hyperspace distortions. Fascinating technology they use, by the way. Much more elegant than our brute force approach to faster-than-light travel. A new voice crackled over the communication system. This is Admiral Rex Thunderbolt of the Earth Defense Force. Permission to come aboard. I brought sandwiches. Zephyr's world was rapidly becoming a place where nothing made sense. You have an admiral named Rex Thunderbolt. Actually, his real name is Robert Thompson, Murphy admitted, but he legally changed it after watching too many old action movies. Don't worry, he's competent. Mostly. The admiral turned out to be a surprisingly normal-looking human, apart from the fact that he was wearing what appeared to be a military uniform designed by someone who'd never seen a real military uniform, but had very strong opinions about the importance of shiny buttons. Captain Klaxon. He boomed, somehow managing to make even a handshake feel like a military operation. Welcome to the solar system. I understand you folks have some pest problems you need help with. Pest problems? Zephyr repeated weakly. Hostile aliens trying to destroy your civilization. We call them pests. Don't worry, we're experts at pest control. By the end of the first day, Zephyr had consumed enough coffee to power a small planet and was beginning to understand why humans seemed to vibrate at a slightly higher frequency than most species. He was also beginning to realize that asking humans for help was less like hiring a contractor and more like accidentally triggering a natural disaster. Murphy had not only fixed their defense grid but had somehow integrated it with what he called Earth's early warning system, which apparently included surveillance satellites, deep space monitoring stations, and something called Bob's amateur radio network that covered half the galaxy. The beauty of redundancy, Murphy explained while installing what appeared to be a beverage dispenser in the ship's bridge, is that if one system fails, you've got 17 backups. And if all 18 systems fail, you've got bigger problems than system failures. Meanwhile, Petra had taken it upon herself to optimize their ship's systems with improvements that nobody had asked for. The life support system now included what she called aromatherapy enhancement. The computer system had been upgraded with something called emotional intelligence subroutines, and the food replicators had been programmed with human recipes that included mysterious ingredients like love and a pinch of hope. I don't understand the need for cup holders, Zephyr admitted as Murphy installed the 47th beverage-related modification. Trust me, you will, Murphy replied with the confidence of someone who'd never been wrong about anything. Humans have a saying, the difference between a good ship and a great ship is where you put the cup holders. Actually, we don't have that saying, but we should. Admiral Thunderbolt had somehow managed to turn the simple task of providing security into a full-scale military operation. His fleet had not only taken defensive positions around the space station but had begun what he called proactive reconnaissance of the surrounding systems. Admiral, Zephyr said during one of their increasingly surreal briefings, your ships are conducting military operations in sovereign space belonging to 17 different species. Relax, Captain. We're just saying hello, and maybe asking a few questions about their military capabilities, fleet movements, and plans for galactic domination. Standard diplomatic stuff. That's not diplomacy, that's espionage. Depends on how you look at it. From our perspective, we're just being neighborly. From their perspective, they're probably wondering why they suddenly can't move a single ship without us knowing about it. Petra had meanwhile discovered that several of their systems were based on principles that humans had theorized about, but never actually implemented. This is incredible, she announced, holding up what used to be their navigation system. You've actually created a stable temporal field generator. Do you realize what this means for causality theory? It means we can navigate through hyperspace without getting lost, Zephyr replied tiredly. But the implications. If we can stabilize temporal fields, we can potentially create localized time dilation effects. Imagine the possibilities for defense. We could slow down incoming weapons, accelerate our own response times, maybe even create temporal shields. Please don't give her any more ideas, Zephyr whispered to Murphy. Too late, Murphy replied cheerfully. She's already started working on something she calls chronological enhancements. I'd explain what that means, but I don't think any of us are ready for that conversation. It was during the second day, while Zephyr was trying to understand why his ship's computer had started offering him cooking tips, that the truth began to emerge. He found Murphy in what used to be their engine room, installing what appeared to be a small factory. "Murphy," he said carefully, "what exactly are you building?" "Oh, just a little manufacturing facility. Nothing fancy, just enough to produce spare parts, ammunition, and coffee. You know, the essentials." Murphy looked up from his work. "Captain, can I ask you a question?" "At this point, why not?" "Why do you think it took your people so long to contact us?" Zephyr considered this. "Well, you're a relatively primitive species. Your technology is basic, your society is chaotic, and you still haven't figured out faster-than-light communication." Murphy nodded thoughtfully. "That's what we figured you'd think. Here's the thing, though. We've been ready for this conversation for about 15 years. "Ready for what conversation?" "The one where someone from the galactic community finally asks us to help with something important." Murphy gestured toward the viewports, where Admiral Thunderbolt's fleet was conducting what looked like military exercises. "See, we've been monitoring galactic communications since we achieved FTL travel. Not because we're nosy, though we are, but because we wanted to understand what we were getting into. And we realized that most galactic species approach problems by trying to find the most elegant, efficient solution. You look for the minimum amount of effort required to achieve the desired result." Zephyr nodded. "That's logical." "Sure, but humans don't work that way. When we see a problem, we don't just want to solve it. We want to solve it so thoroughly that it never happens again. We want to solve it so completely that we accidentally solve 12 other problems we didn't even know we had." Murphy stood up and activated a holographic display showing their defense grid modifications. "Your original system was designed to repel attacking ships. Our version is designed to repel attacking ships, scan and analyze their technology, trace their origin point, evaluate their strategic capabilities, and automatically dispatch diplomatic envoys to negotiate their surrender before they even know they're under attack." "That seems excessive." "That's the point. Humans don't believe in proportional responses. We believe in overwhelming responses. Your defense grid was vulnerable because it was designed to be just good enough. Our version is designed to be so good that anyone thinking about attacking you will reconsider their life choices." Petra appeared at that moment, carrying what looked like a coffee mug that was glowing with its own internal light. "Captain, perfect timing. I've been analyzing your crew's physiological responses to caffeine, and I think I've developed a blend that's perfectly calibrated to your species' neurochemistry." She handed him the mug. "It's got a mild stimulant effect, enhances cognitive function, and I've added some compounds that should improve your natural regenerative abilities. Also, it tastes like what humans call chocolate mint, which our studies suggest is universally appealing." Zephyr took a sip. It was, he had to admit, probably the most delicious thing he'd ever tasted. "This is very good. I'm glad you like it. I've also programmed your food replicators to produce it automatically. And I may have added a few other enhancements to your dietary options. Nothing major, just some vitamin supplements and flavor enhancers that should improve your overall health and well-being." "You've been improving our health?" "Oh, definitely. Humans have a theory that happy, healthy allies are more effective allies. So we've been optimizing your ship's environment for maximum crew performance. Better lighting, improved air circulation, enhanced nutrition, and what we call environmental psychology adjustments." Murphy nodded. "She's also been reverse engineering your technology to see if we can improve our own systems." "Fair trade, really. We help you, you help us, everybody benefits." "And Admiral Thunderbolt?" "The Admiral is making sure that anyone who might have been planning to attack the Confederation knows that they'd also be attacking Earth. It's a deterrent strategy. Very effective from what we've seen." 1 week later, Zephyr stood on the bridge of the Moderate Concern, which now bore little resemblance to the ship he'd arrived in. The defense grid problem had been solved so thoroughly that the Galactic Confederation now possessed what Admiral Thunderbolt called the most unreasonably effective defensive system in known space. "Captain," Blitz announced, "we're receiving a message from the High Council. They're asking how we managed to upgrade the entire defense grid in less than a week." "Tell them we asked humans for help," Zephyr replied, sipping his morning coffee from a mug that maintained the perfect temperature and somehow never seemed to empty. "And sir? They're also asking about the fleet of human warships that have taken up permanent defensive positions around our major systems. Tell them those come with the warranty." Through the viewports, Zephyr could see Murphy's latest project taking shape. What had started as a simple repair facility had evolved into something that looked like a cross between a space station and a small city. When asked about it, Murphy had simply said, "Well, if we're going to be neighbors, we might as well be good neighbors." Dr. Petrovolt's research had somehow resulted in technological improvements that were already being implemented across Confederation space. Coffee consumption had increased by approximately 10,000%, and productivity had mysteriously improved by a similar margin. When questioned about the correlation, she'd simply shrugged and said, "Caffeine is a hell of a drug." Admiral Thunderbolt had somehow managed to turn what was supposed to be a temporary security arrangement into a permanent alliance. The Human Defense Force was now officially part of the Galactic Confederation's military structure, which meant that anyone thinking about attacking the Confederation would have to contend with a species that approached warfare the same way they approached everything else, with overwhelming enthusiasm and complete disregard for the concept of proportional response. "Sir," Flux Capacitor announced, "the humans are requesting permission to install something called a Improvement and Optimization Center on our homeworld." "What does that do?" Zephyr asked, though he'd learned to be wary of human explanations. According to their proposal, it would enhance quality of life, improve technological capabilities, and provide ongoing support for continued development and growth. And they're also asking if we'd like them to take a look at our transportation systems, communication networks, and economic infrastructure. Zephyr closed his eyes. In less than a week, humanity had gone from being a barely known species on the galactic periphery to being intimately involved in the inner workings of Confederation society. They'd solved the defense grid problem, improved ship efficiency across the board, introduced a beverage that was apparently mildly addictive but significantly beneficial, and established a permanent military presence that made the Confederation effectively unconquerable. "Sir?" Blitz prompted. "Tell them yes," Zephyr said finally, "and ask them if they have any other ideas for improvements." "They've already sent a list, sir. It's quite comprehensive." Zephyr opened his eyes and looked at the data pad Blitz handed him. The list included items like galactic internet, standardized coffee distribution, improved interspecies communication protocols, and optimization of planetary defense systems. At the bottom of the list, someone had added a note, "These are just the preliminary suggestions. We're working on the big ideas." Zephyr had a sinking feeling that the Galactic Confederation was about to discover what humans meant by big ideas. On the other hand, their defense grid had never worked better, their ships had never been more efficient, and he'd never felt more alert and energetic in his entire life. "Captain," Murphy's voice crackled over the communication system, "we've been thinking about your faster-than-light travel systems. Mind if we take a look?" Zephyr looked out at the growing space station, the fleet of human warships, and the steady stream of ships arriving to experience what was already being called the human upgrade package. "Why not?" he said, raising his never-empty coffee mug